and welcome to this Tuesday edition of Border Report Live, coming to you from Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley. My name is Rudy Mireles, and I am your host for today's edition. And also joining us today is South Texas correspondent Sandra Sanchez. And a little later in the program, we're also going to hear from our San Diego correspondent Salvador Rivera. But let's go ahead and bring in Sandra right now, who has been following the latest that's happening. The big story for those of us that are living here in South Texas on the border, in deep South Texas, is that brand new federally designated military zone that runs along the banks of the Rio Grande. Sandra, you've been following this since it kind of broke last week. Tell us what this national defense area is, how big is it, and what does it actually mean for us living here?
Yeah, Rudy, to me, it is the most significant announcement since I moved here to the Rio Grande Valley in 2013. This is massive. They are talking 250 miles in two South Texas border counties, Hidalgo and Cameron County. Right here where we are in Harlingen, this is Cameron County. This starts at the Gulf of Mexico, as you know, to what we call the Mid-Valley. And then the Hidalgo includes the big city of McAllen. So they are saying 250 miles. These were lands that were previously under management by the International Boundary and Water Commission. What you're looking at right there is a levee. And the levees are these earthen structures that they use here to help prevent flood control. The land that's under the levee, that levee land was managed by the IBWC. You can even see border wall there in the background. But in what the announcement said is from now on, this land is now an extended military base. That means it is part of Joint Base San Antonio, which is 250 miles away from us. And this is an extended military zone, which means if you set foot on that area, you're walking on a military base and you're trespassing.
So if I'm trespassing in that zone, let's say I'm just, going for a jog or whatever, my usual jog. This is new, something I haven't seen before. I get caught. What kind of charges am I facing if I accidentally cross that line that wasn't there last week?
Yeah, and just to back up a little bit, a few years ago, they actually passed a law saying we really couldn't be on the levee. And that, I think, was in preparation for before they built the border wall on the levee. And an enforcement zone with the border wall exists at 150 feet north or south of the border wall. So actually, we're really not supposed to be on the levee anyway, but many of us do. I walk dogs, I jog on the levee. Exactly. The idea is somebody illegally crossing into the United States, if they are caught in this military zone, they can be charged with criminal trespass in a military zone. This carries a potential jail time of 18 months. In addition, they can be charged with illegally entering the United States or re-entry into the United States if they had previously been apprehended.
Now, you mentioned that we weren't kind of supposed to be up there to begin with when they passed that rule. No one's allowed on those levees. Is there any kind of signage? Because I know back in my military days when I was in the Air Force, when you would go up to an Air Force base along the fence line every 100 feet or so, maybe even a shorter distance in between, there was these giant speed limit size signs that say you are warning you that you were crossing into a military installation. It said two things that always stood out to me. It's that you can be searched without your consent, whether that's you or your vehicle within that area, and also that there's authorized use of deadly force if necessary. Is there any plan to put any kind of signage up to let folks? I mean, there's a lot of border and a lot of space in between here and the end of the border. What are they going to do to kind of let folks know that about this change?
Yes, the Air Force, in making this announcement, said that they are going to put bilingual signs up like they have in West Texas. You know, I went to a segment, you saw that video just recently. I went to a section of the border wall, and I went with some environmentalists, and they were saying, where are they going to put these signs? Now, this section here is Brownsville. This is right on the banks of the Rio Grande, and this is Concertina. Here, this section here is border levee just east of Santa Ana National Wildlife Refuge. This is not on the wildlife refuge, but there's no border wall. There's no concertina wire. There's nothing there. Border wall's way back in the background, you can see. So where are they going to put the signage? And they do have bilingual signs, but there have been hundreds of people arrested. And actually, many people have successfully argued in federal court because in the West Texas National Defense areas, they didn't know they were walking on a military base. And just to add a little story to this, 2021, I was in Del Rio covering a surge of people coming across. I went to take a picture of a sign from the Laughlin Air Force Base from the road. I got arrested, detained, pulled into the base for illegally trespassing. I was held under armed guard, and they were going to charge me for taking a photo. And, I said, I'll leave. I didn't even enter the base. No, you have to come through. You were in the base when you took the photo from the road. And that was honestly one of the scariest moments of my life as a journalist. They did understand and they let me go. But I didn't know that from the road, I was taking a picture of a military base, the sign, and that was illegal.
Yeah, I know sometimes those, it's almost the signage kind of tells you if you're not paying close attention, some of those signs will actually warn you not to take photos. I know not all of them do, but it seems like even the ones that don't will, get you at least stopped for a little bit and questioned over that. And as far as these cases, you said some of them have been thrown out in West Texas. Are any of them sticking?
Yeah, we're hearing a few dozen have. There have been over 100, 120-ish cases. Some of them have. And let me just explain the NDAs. There's 2 national defense zones that they've established in April. One is from Hudspeth County. That is the county just east of El Paso to the New Mexico line. This includes El Paso. And that is an extension of Fort Bliss. Then there's another NDA that they made, and that is from the entire New Mexico border, and that's Fort Huachuca, which is attached to Arizona. Now, we also understand, CNN is reporting that, and other media are reporting, and we could hear this very soon, that the military is going to announce another national defense area. It's going to be outside Yuma, Arizona, and it'll be about 100 miles long, and it will be attached to that base in Yuma.
I was going to say, it sounds like they're kind of just trying to prop these up along wherever they already have an installation. We got the Yuma Proving Grounds down there where it's more of a joint base, I think, at this point. So it makes you wonder if we're going to see any more installations across the southern border. Now, as far as everything that's going to be happening here, you talked about some arresting powers. Who's going to be doing that? Since it's a military installation, do troops, do airmen from security forces units up at Lackland come down and take on that mission? Who does all that here?
Well, I interviewed Hidalgo County Judge Richard Cortez, who had not been briefed by the federal authorities, but his sheriff, Eddie Guerra, Hidalgo County Sheriff, had spoken with them, and he was told that the military would have the ability to withhold someone, but they were not going to do arrests. And so they would withhold them and send them over to another federal agency. And keep in mind, these lands were IBWC, federal U.S. lands, transferred to another federal agency, the Department of Defense. So this is only on the federal lands. Yesterday, I spoke to U.S. Customs and Border Protection officials who said they will be processing these people, and that there are 9 stations here in the Rio Grande Valley sector, and they are more than equipped to process, as well as there is a central processing center that can hold people. So right now, that's what we're hearing. I know there was some concern that local law enforcement would have to hold people in their jails, and concern, how many people could this be? As you know, and as we've talked about, the number of people crossing the border is dramatically down, but the military, could add to this. What Hidalgo County Judge Cortez said was, this is another layer of security, and we could see more arrests coming. But he was not really thrilled about this, and I think part of it is, and he's the top elected official in this entire county of about 1 million people. He wasn't told about it. I think we have some video of him talking about this.
That this was just a way to legally be able to have military personnel in that property, which is basically federal property already along the river.
So I spoke to a source who said it includes the river. We have lost access to the river in Hidalgo County.
Well, you haven't lost access to it. It's just under military control.
How do you feel about that?
Well, Sandra, we have an issue that we haven't been able to resolve with immigration, and I think that this is kind of a drastic way of addressing it. I think we continue to address illegal immigration under the enforcement-only policy. I think that we need to have both. I think we need to change the laws to give people, immigrants that we do need and we do want, an easier way to get here, and a lot of these problems would go away.
Strong words there, right?
Yeah. Now, one question I do have is, you talked about a lot of this land was already controlled by a different federal agency, but down here in South Texas, that's not the case. There are private homeowners, our abuelas, our tios, our tias, us. We own land down here. So what happens for those folks, especially the landowners that may have already granted an easement to IBWC? What happens with their properties?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And the latest data that I was able to find, a Texas A&M study from 2018 found that almost 300,000 parcels of land in Hidalgo County are privately owned, and about 175,000 in Cameron County. So we are talking a lot of the land is privately owned, and they have these easements. What we are also hearing is that these easements were negotiated with IBWC for the use of other officials to come on the property to help with water control, flooding, and whatnot. So I'm told by a source they believe they're going to have to renegotiate those easements. We are keeping our ears open to find out with landowners whether, military is just going on their property, but it's under we believe that they will have to renegotiate. And some of these negotiations go back to the 40s when the IBWC was formed. And so, there's not a comprehensive database of all of these agreements with the landowners. So this, I'm told, was kind of a premature announcement. Of course, it plays in with the Trump administration wanting to really stop illegal immigration on the southwest border.
Which should be interesting. It seems like easements, depending on the state, the locality, can go one way or the other, but it's going to be a lot of work for whoever is going to be taking on that task for sure. Well, this isn't the only military operation going on the border. About 1,300 miles to the west of us in San Diego, California, U.S. Marines have been on their border security mission, and when we come back, we're going to talk to our San Diego correspondent, Salvador Rivera, to fill us in on what those troops have been doing. So stay with us. Border Report is back in about a minute. Welcome back to Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mideles, and today's topic is militarization along the border. And joining me from the other side of the U.S. Mexico border is Border Report correspondent, San Diego correspondent, Salvador Rivera. Hey, Salvador, how are you doing?
Rudy, how are you? Nice to finally talk to you. It's been a while that I've been gone. I apologize about that, but it's good to be with you guys finally.
Good to have you with us. And so tell us a little bit about what you've been seeing. We know this new militarized zone down here along the Rio Grande Valley, but what have you been seeing with U.S. Marines over in San Diego?
Well, certainly no extended military zones, areas like we've been talking about in Texas. Here, the Marines are in the area, but they've been basically in the background doing a lot of support missions like stringing concertina wire or C-wire, as it is referred to. The Marines are, again, every morning they go out. They're stationed at the Imperial Beach Border Patrol Station, which is near the coast. And every morning they get into a convoy, military vehicles, and they take off and they depart start for various spots along the border between San Diego and Tijuana. And this is what they're doing. They're stringing out concertina wire, and this is to keep the migrants from climbing over the wall and then dropping down onto U.S. territory. And so far, it appears that these efforts are working because the numbers, like all along throughout the southern border, the numbers of migrants of apprehensions are way down here in the San Diego sector. And these are Marines that have been here since January when President Trump deployed the Marines to the area. Now we're hearing that because it's somewhat difficult to travel 60, 90 minutes to the east to set up the concertina wire along the border. Now some of the Marines are being deployed to a small town called Campo, which is about 60 miles to the east of downtown San Diego. The Marines will now be based there. This will keep them in the area, allowing them to do operations on the east side of San Diego County to do similar projects like they have been doing in this area right between San Diego and Tijuana. So having the Marines in that area allows them to do a lot more work, be closer to the area, and this way they don't have to get on a convoy in their trucks every morning and drive an hour, 90 minutes to start this type of operations. Now, this all began again in January when President Trump deployed the Marines to the area. And I wanted to backtrack about a year ago to what was going on. A year ago, President Biden made it harder to seek asylum. He signed an executive order to finally crack down on the mass number of people coming to the border to seek asylum. So he made it really hard. And from that point, we started seeing the numbers come down. June, July, August, September, October, into November, the election happened. President Trump won the election. When he took over in January, he made it nearly impossible to seek asylum. And but he kind of upped the ante, sending the Marines, National Guard, to the border here with Mexico. And they have been here ever since, again, performing this operations there in the background. They don't do arrests. They don't stop anybody. That is not part of their mission, not what they're allowed to do. And certainly we don't have any of these extended military spaces that Rudy, you and Sandra have been talking about in Texas, and now apparently going to be one in Arizona, but nothing like that here. Marines, again, in the background, doing this type of missions to help support Border Patrol and other CBP officers.
And just a quick question, San Diego, that's where half the Marines in the country end up going for basic training. Are these Marines that are there, again, are they from that area, or are they being deployed from other places around the country?
They are based at Camp Pendleton, which is about 70 miles north of the border. It's a huge military installation between San Diego and the Los Angeles area. All of these Marines, several hundred of them, are from that specific base, and they were deployed here to the San Diego or California, Mexico border region.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Salvador, for your reporting today. We appreciate you, and it's good to have you back from vacation, sir.
Good to be back.
All right. Thank you, sir. Coming up in just a little bit, when Border Report comes back, we're going to turn to a pretty important topic for those of us that live across the border, and that is international bridges. We're going to talk more about the presidential approval process that's speeding up some work here in Cameron County when Border Report returns. Stay with us. And welcome back to Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles, and before the break, we were talking about something that's near and dear to everybody who lives along the border's heart, and that is the international bridges. In Cameron County, Texas's most southernmost county, right now is in the process of building a fourth international bridge, thanks to an expedited process approved by Congress in the last session. So let's bring back in South Texas correspondent Sandra Sanchez to talk about this process. You know, I've been talking to friends and family about crossing back and forth to Matamoros, whether it be for work, shopping, just to get a bite to eat, and they all say the same thing: 2, 3, sometimes 4-hour waits just to go get a 15-minute haircut in Reynosa, So, what is this fast track process, and what counties are eligible to take part of it?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And actually going to Reynosa, it's not going to help you, but going from Cameron County to Matamoros, we will have quicker routes because Congress, like you mentioned last year, gave special fast track expedited authorization to 3 counties, Cameron and Webb, which includes Laredo, and then Maverick, which includes Eagle Pass. And so far, there have been 5 presidential permits issued for 5 different bridges in those 3 counties, and they're awaiting a new one in Eagle Pass. So what's been approved is the expansion of the World Trade Bridge in Laredo, right there, which is the number 1 port for commercial vehicles on the southwest border. And they're going to add 8 lanes north to south. And then the expansion of the Columbia Solidarity Bridge outside Laredo also. This area, what you're looking at right there, is where the Flor de Mayo Bridge is going to be built here in Cameron County in North Brownsville. It's going to connect to Matamoros. And they just got, that's the last one that recently received presidential approval a few months ago, almost a year ago. The last bridge to get approval was in Eagle Pass, and that was just about a couple weeks ago. And that is going to be an expansion of that bridge. And so there also was a railroad bridge built. So with this process, it allows the counties to continue with their design and development before the NEPA or the National Environmental Protection Act regulations are all fully met. But it means that they must meet all the environmental regulations. So if they're in this process and they suddenly discover that there's some endangered owl that they're about to, threaten, then they have to stop the process and do a workaround. But in the past, they couldn't apply for it until the NEPA process went through. And it just took years and years and years. I've spoken to some local people who said, they've been talking about this new bridge for decades, which they probably have, but it was in 2021 they put the paperwork through, and because of this new law, actually they're going to get this 4-lane bridge here in Cameron County.
Now, what are local officials saying about this? I know we heard from Hidalgo County's local county judge earlier. What did the Cameron County judge have anything to say on this subject?
Spoke to him also recently. His name is Eddie Trevino Jr., and he's very encouraged by the process, and they have 5 years to get the first shovel in the ground. They have until May 31st, 2029, or their permit is expired. So I think we have something a little bit about what he says about how this process is helping them.
In spite of some of the recent developments, we think that, and I think it's imperative that we continue to sound the importance of cross-border trade. Trading with our partner in Mexico, through the state of Texas, through all of our ports of entry from Brownsville all the way to El Paso, is critical not just to our local economy, but that to the state of Texas and to our country at large. I think that in the discussion that's been had recently with regards to the implementation of a tariff policy, we can't lose sight that we need to be able to continue to enhance, promote, and provide and move forward with regard to the cross-border trade between ourselves and Mexico, and including our neighbors to the north, Canada.
There you have it. Talking about despite all these, tariffs on, tariffs off, it doesn't matter. We need to go forward. It's $170 billion a year in trade between the two countries. A lot of that does pass through the World Trade Bridge. But as you know, in Hidalgo County, FAR is the number 1 for produce that comes in. And as you said, there are 4 crossings now. There will be in Cameron County. Matamoros is a huge city, and getting their goods to and from, and getting people to and from there is really important.
In spite of some of the recent developments.
Sorry about that.
Always good to hear from Eddie. So yeah, no, he's very excited. He thinks the process is going to go through. I spoke to some locals, and they're already building like a Starbucks and a McDonald's there on the corner, and they've got other shops. I mean, everybody's waiting for this to come through.
Yeah, it seems like everyone that I've been talking to since the news about this new international bridge, including my own family, they're pretty excited about hopefully having another option. And again, those wait times are just so long coming back, especially. So hopefully this will clear some things up for them.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you so much, Sandra. And other news happening along the border, and this time actually in Florida, the president made a trip to the controversial new immigration detention facility being built in the Florida Everglades, deep in South Florida. It's being dubbed the Alligator Alcatraz, and I'm trying to get video up for you. Here we go. That's a look at the facility right there. The president, who was flanked by Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, toured that detention facility today. The authorities say it can cost $450 million a year to run, and it can hold up to 5,000 migrants, and is in a desolate area lined west of Miami with alligators and python snakes. Now, environmentalists say that the construction from the facility, which used to be an abandoned airstrip, is destroying the ecosystem nearby and is actually on ancient lands owned by indigenous tribes of Florida. And those folks are also worrying about damages from possible hurricanes ramming through the state. Earlier today, on his way to visit the facility, the president said that migrants will have to know how to, quote, how to run away from an alligator to escape the facility. We'll have more on that on borderreport.com. And really quick, happening in Arizona, voters will decide next November whether to designate drug cartels operating across the southern border as terrorist organizations after that initiative cleared the state's Senate on Friday. Now, this is something we saw Texas Governor Greg Abbott do by executive action in 2022. The Texas legislature codified it into law in the following spring. This is an effort to put the initiative on the ballot last year, which stalled in the state's Senate due to a Republican majority. Not immediately clear what new resources of funding a terrorist designation from the state would provide, because typically that's what these kind of designations mean, an extra kind of funding to fight off those organizations. But 8 cartels have been added to the list of foreign terrorist organizations operated by the U.S. government, and members of the groups on that list cannot enter the U.S. legally, and they're also subject to financial sanctions. And here in Texas, I know we actually have our own list that's rolling, that's part of the Texas Comptroller's Office, who manages that for us. But that is going to do it for today's edition of Border Report Live. To check out those stories that Sandra, Salvador, and the rest of the team from Brownsville, Texas, all the way to San Diego, California, have been working on, you can visit borderreport.com. My name is Rudy Mireles. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.